Okay, well, good evening, everyone. I'm David Rubin, the Brown Foundation Curator of Contemporary Art here at SEMA, and we're really delighted tonight to present a wonderful program about the late Linda Pace on the occasion of her birthday. Before we begin, I'd like to ask you to please silence your cell phones. We are videotaping the program. There will be a question and answer at the end, and I want to this is, of course, being presented in conjunction with the exhibition, San Antonio Collects Contemporary, which features a little drama to get the evening started, which features a number of works from the Linda Pace Foundation collection. And we are extremely grateful to the Linda Pace Foundation for partnering with us in presenting the exhibition and tonight's program. Also, before I introduce our guest panelists tonight, I want to also mention one forthcoming event in conjunction with the exhibition on May 29th at 6:30 at the same time and place. I will be presenting a conversation with the artist Willie Cole, who is one of the artists represented in the Pace Foundation collection. Well, tonight, and we're just sitting in a living room here chatting, and our guests tonight are Jan Jarboe Russell, who is Linda Pace's biographer, and of course all our panelists were good friends, and we'll learn more about that. Guillermo Nicolas, collector and lender to San Antonio Collects Contemporary, and Riley Robinson, artist and studio director at Art Pace. So let's welcome them. So we thought we would begin by asking our guests to talk a little bit about how they met Linda Pace and their relationship with them, and we'll start with Guillermo.
Well, I was telling everybody I'm really terrible at dates. Can you hear me? And everybody that knows me knows I'm really terrible at dates. But I met Linda and Kit as a young kid, I guess a high schooler, and knew them and knew Linda's mother, Margaret. But when you're a kid, at least in my day, kids were seen and not heard, so we weren't really paid much attention to. And not until the very early 90s, when I opened my first business, did I really kind of reunite a bit with Linda. Because Marty, her daughter, came to work for me at Zazu, so that's how we kind of reunited. And then during that period, Linda was opening Art Pace, so it was a very exciting period, and it was very interesting.
And okay, let's move on to Riley and tell us about how you met Linda.
I'm sorry, I'm not usually a public speaker. I'm a little nervous. I hope that's all right, but I see a lot of friends here tonight. When I was a graduate student at the University of Texas at San Antonio, the office called over to the sculpture building and said that this person wanted to come over and tour the facility and just look and see how it's all put together. And it was Linda. She was doing part of her looking around at facilities and at other programs when she was putting Art Pace together. And I think that was about 2 years, if I remember my dates correctly, before Art Pace actually opened in 1995. So I was actually introduced to her very, very early and kind of saw what she was trying to do. She went all over the world looking at other arts residency programs and was really, really careful and thoughtful about how she put Art Pace together. She took a long time to do it.
And Jan.
Well, I first met Linda Pace in 1994, and as Riley was saying, Linda began the research for Art Pace in 1993, and it opened in 1995. And at that time, I was a staff writer for Texas Monthly Magazine, and word got out that Linda Pace was working on this artist residency program in San Antonio. And so my editor asked me if I would go and interview Linda and do a story in 1994 so while she was kind of midway through it, and then it was sort of the end of 1994, and then it would run in 1995, and that's what happened. So I went to Linda's house as a journalist. I knew of her, but I didn't know her personally, and I did the interview and in her studio, and we had a great time. And then synchronicity happened, because unbeknownst to me and unbeknownst to Linda, both of us were very involved separately at this time in dream work, in dream analysis. And we were both going to the same dream analyst in San Antonio, and we didn't know it at that moment. Although dreams came up in the interview, I didn't reveal to her that I was in on the dream work too. And so this analyst decided that she was going to put together a group of writers and artists, women, who were attempting to access greater depths of their creativity. And so I walked into the dream group 2 weeks after I met Linda, and she was there. And we had to team up a writer with an artist. And so that night, Linda became my dream partner. And it went on from 1994 until 2007, with us sharing our night dreams together, and each night learning a little bit more about aspects of ourselves that we didn't yet know. And that's how the friendship began.
Well, Jan, of course, you are Linda's biographer, so we thought we'd ask you to begin to share with us a little bit about Linda's background in the early years before, she became Linda that we all know from her professional profile.
So the question is, how did Linda become Linda, is I think the question.
Right.
And although this book, Dreaming Red, is one that I worked with in collaboration with Linda, really it's not a full biography of Linda, but it does offer us beginning clues into how Linda became Linda and how we became who we are, those of us who are involved in contemporary art in San Antonio. I think that one of the things that happened is that Linda grew up in a family with strong and wealthy women. Her mother, Margot, as Guillermo said, was incredibly strong. And Linda talked about early on the origins of power that she understood were matriarchal. They came from mothers. Her Margot's mother, Hedwig, came to Texas from Germany, and she was a nice, fine German lady. But she came to take care of her aunt, Emma Kohler, whose family owned Pearl Brewery. And Linda's earliest memories are going to Pearl Brewery, and by the time she was there, her grandmother was on the board of Pearl Brewery, and Emma had been the chair of the board. So she went into this boardroom. There were all these male pictures, except there were these two female pictures, and these happened to be the chairman of the board, her grandmother and her great aunt. And so the way that the women in Linda's family wielded power was that they were strong and they were sort of silent, because, of course, the culture at large was run by men. And so they were pretty strong but silent women. And so I think that is part of how she became who she was. Later, when she was forming Art Page, she said that everything she learned from her mothers and her grandmothers about entrepreneurial activities, she learned as a child through the brewery and later the picante sauce business. Both her father and her mother were, I would describe them both as artists. Her mother had a degree from art at Newcomb, and she was a painter, and she was Linda's first art teacher. She taught painting at San Antonio College and at the San Antonio Art Institute. So Linda's mother-daughter relationship was based upon art. In addition, her father was an extraordinary tinkerer. He wasn't really, I don't think that successful a businessman, but he was a genius at, like he designed the shape of the picante sauce bottle, and it took great care so that when you grab it in the middle, you know, you'll have something sturdy to hold and something that's a nice design to hold on to. He also had, when Linda would go to his office, he would design the furniture, and one thing he designed was this chair that he could take a nap on. And so it was this, Linda called her father Dash, and she called her mother Margot. And so there was this reclining lounge chair. And George Nelson from Herman Miller attempted to buy it from Dash, but Dash thought it was worth more than Herman Miller could pay for it, and stupidly didn't sell the design. So I think in her life, in her family of origin, it was very artistic, it was very creative, and that's the secret to how Linda became Linda, is that she was an artist first, and then that informed how she went about nurturing creativity in other artists.
And Guillermo, you had some things, I believe, also to say about the early years.
I might have, but I'm not sure if I remember now. You know, I really don't. I just, other than I do remember them having the Picante company, and I do remember when Mr. Goldsberry, you know, and Linda bought it and took over. When Linda bought it and took over, and kind of, you know, when their kids were, you know, 19, 20, and we started to kind of get to know each other through the store and through all of that. So really, and of course, Margot and I sat on the board of SAMA for about 6 or 7 years, and had a pretty good time together.
Okay, well, we're going to kind of go chronologically at this point through some of the major milestones in the life of Linda Pace, and I'm sure, Guillermo, when we talk about collecting, you'll share some of those great stories. Absolutely. That I know you have. But in the meantime, I think, Riley, you were there at the very beginning during the founding of Art Pace, so why don't you start telling us a little bit about your recollections of that?
We were very busy when we started, and it never slowed down, and it's still moving really quickly
How did
today.
you get involved in the first place with Art Pace?
Lawrence Miller, who was consulting with Linda on a number of aspects of Art Pace, was interviewing people, and he just called me up one day and wanted to know if I could come over and help out, work with some artists, and you know, they offered me a studio upstairs in the Hudson showroom, and I thought I didn't really want to work where I made my own artwork, but it was really busy. I started in right after they made the first panel selection, so we had the artists selected, and we were preparing for that. Working with Jesse Amato was really a highlight, and we were figuring things out. And
So tell us about your job, and I know you, and when we met previously, you shared a memory of when Linda walked in on you one day and all of that. So.
It was really hot. This was before we had the air conditioners installed in Art Pace, and I was installing some of the stationary power tools, and it was like a Saturday afternoon or something like that, and we were furiously working towards an opening date. And Nate Cassie, a past resident artist, and Joe Don, another past resident artist, both lived here in San Antonio, just came over at about 4 o'clock, and they brought a 6-pack of beer. And I was like, okay, and I was finishing up my work, and we were just sitting around talking, and then Linda's car pulls up. And I was like, boy, I haven't been on this job more than 2 months, and this is it. I'm done for. And when she comes over and she goes, Riley, I'd like to speak with you for a minute. And I was just shaking my head, and she pulls me over to the side, and she goes, that's exactly what I want to happen at Art Pace. I want people to come over and feel comfortable here. And
So how involved was Linda with, you know, in the first installations and all of that?
She left the artists alone. She really just wanted to see.
So was there a
Basically-
philosophy that she had about that?
She just wanted to listen, and I think that goes back to Jan, and just listening. She wanted to
Right.
see what they had to do. She wanted to let them make their own work without any filter put over top of it, and that's the way we started out, and we still do that today.
So Jan, why don't you
Well, yeah,
could carry on the story here?
origins- The origins, I think, of Art Pace, I think it would be important for us to say that after Linda was divorced, she made a priority to reclaim her life as an artist. And there was a funny story about it. So she's like having her midlife correction, you know, and in her mid-40s. And she and Betsy Dudley, who may be here tonight, I don't know, signed up for a sculpture class at the San Antonio Art Institute at the McNay. And Bill Fitzgibbons from Blue Star was the instructor. And he took one look at Betsy and Linda walking in their overdressed, fancy outfits and thought, you know, come on, what am I going to do with you all? And what he did is that Linda told him she wanted to learn how to weld. And so Linda started doing this welding at the Art Institute, and she just loved the process of making art. And that was what she loved the most about the San Antonio Art Institute, the process of making art. And she learned in those early days at the Art Institute to trust the creative process. And other artists helped her learn how to do this. So this is what she decided she wanted to do for the rest of her life. She wanted to make art, and she wanted to create a space where other artists would be free to do anything they wanted to do with an unfettered voice, and she wanted to be part of it. And that's why I have to say that I don't believe there would have been an Art Pace unless Linda had decided to take herself seriously as an artist. And I don't want to say that, but in terms of that first residency, I think one of the things Lawrence did that was brilliant is that he hired Rob Storr from MoMA to be the first curator. And Linda was in love with the way that Rob Storr looked at contemporary art. Linda thought of art as almost an alternate consciousness, and Rob Storr definitely felt that way. And these first three artists, Jessie, Annette Messager, Felix Gonzalez-Torres, Linda got very personally involved in those first artists' work, and she took it personally. I can remember her saying, you know, when she saw the works that Annette was preserving, she thought, well, there are things in my past, Linda's saying, projecting onto the piece, there are things in my past I want to preserve too. And when Jessie's work was there, she saw a lot of it was about letting go of the past and washing your hands of the past. And she thought, you know, there's a lot of me too that needs to let go. So she was incredibly personally involved there all the time during those residencies, and none of us will ever forget the opening night when it all came together in this sort of star turn, and that was the beginning.
Let's for a minute ask Guillermo, were you there for the opening night?
No, I wasn't.
What was your first encounter with Art Pace?
Well, I really, you know, would hear all these great stories from Marty when we'd open the store up about, you know, we'd get there about 9 o'clock and have some coffee. We were next to Port La France in those days at the collection, for those of you who don't remember that. And so we'd have a little coffee and chit chat. And so Marty would very enthusiastically fill me in on what was happening and on some of the really exciting work that was going on at Art Pace, and some of the craziness too. Because, you know, you were bringing artists from different parts of the country, different parts of the world. And at that time, you know, you've got to kind of go back and, you know, I love our city, and I don't mean anything derogatory, but, you know, in the mid-90s, San Antonio was still quite provincial. We were very much smaller than we are today. I don't think we realized how big we've grown. But at that time, what Linda was doing at Art Pace was it was wild. It was a little scary to some of us, including me.
In what way? What was wild about it?
Well, we were very conservative here. And, there were these wild artists coming in, and they were, well, for example, one of the things that Art Pace did and still does is they would do the dinners. And it might be nice to hear from Riley or from Jan how those dinners got
Riley, you
started.
want to tell us about that?
It
Do you remember
goes
that?
it goes back to Linda listening to what the artist's voice, and she had a series of small, intimate dinners at her home, and she invited groups of artists, about 10 at a time, to come over, and she just wanted to listen to what they had to say about art in San Antonio, and maybe if they had any ideas about what form Art Pace should take. And they were really quite nice. I remember she did 4 specifically for the artists, because the artist community was all abuzz about what was happening.
And so the dinners were a lot of fun, but what was funny was when she started kind of farming the dinners out to those of us in the community, that I think as much as she loved hosting the artist and listening to them, I think she thought it might be fun to let us host them and her listen to them somewhere else. And so, Marty begged me if I would please host one of these dinners. And so I said yes, and I just moved into my house. And when you move into anything new or buy a new car or anything, you're very careful with it, and you want to keep it shiny and new for as long as you can. And all of a sudden, and I was told there'd be maybe 15 or 20 people. There were, maybe 60 or 70 people. There were dogs. There were artists on skateboards, because in the house is, it's got a long gallery, and they were skateboarding in my house on beige floors, and I was freaking out, and I was kind of virgin to all of that, and here comes Linda, just, very elegant and understated, and says hello and gives me a kiss and thanks me for doing this, and I'm already a frazzled mess, and I'm sure I was sweating, and she asked me if I was okay, and I said, I guess. I said, there are people, that are skating, and there are dogs, and, so, the evening pressed on. There were a lot of smokers out on the patio, and about 9 o'clock or 9:30, she just looks at me and she gives me another kiss and says she's leaving. And I said, "You're what?" I said, I've got a house filled with crazy people smoking, drinking, eating, feeding their dogs, and roller skating. And she said, "Have fun," and walked out. And that was kind of my first, real experience with, Art Pace. And it was and I think that she, in her way, that was really, now as I'm older and hopefully a little wiser, I held a grudge about that party for a while. But now that I'm older, I think it was a very kind thing for her to do, because I think she liked me, but I think she thought I was way too uptight. And I think she thought that I needed to learn to loosen up a little, especially at that age. I was like 25, 26, and I think she thought I was 25, 26 going on, 60. And so that was kind of the beginning of her loosening my shoelaces a little.
And Jan, I know that Linda did considerable research in the founding of Art Pace to try to determine, what she wanted it to be. So before we move on to the next topic, could you just tell us briefly about the research part of that?
Well, she went, as Riley said, she looked at things in Europe, ideas for residency programs